flower fairies. I love that the sentence in the instructions for the morning is to collect the flower petals. Full circle moment. Good morning. Good morning. Collecting flower petals. Same. Morning. I'm sure in this group, it need not be said, but for the sake of the sincerity, that the collective known as humanity is under the influence of the false self, and we are all apt to be magnetized by that from time to time, no matter what our realization is. I want to make it abundantly clear that although it is a great, indescribable joy to be relieved of the burden of self-reflection and the false self, it is not the same thing as an ego moving into hedonistic, I do whatever I want, I feel whatever I want, I get whatever I want, I can react however I want. This is not what Jennifer is saying. It's not the same thing. And I know that you wouldn't be sitting here if your heart wasn't deeply compelled and called by love. There would be no reason for you to be sitting here. And the words that we use to describe realization and its ripening, we might call phases, can sometimes be the exact same words, that an ego would hear as license to live as I see fit. It doesn't come down that way. It isn't, because there's no self-preservation as an agenda and self-servingness as a motivation anymore. But this collective trance of false sense of separateness is really magnetizing sometimes and ubiquitous, right? Like air. And we've all been under the trance for so long that sometimes if there isn't, in a moment of misidentification, there's not enough spaciousness to see the false self, because it's truly ubiquitous and habituated to the point of it's incomprehensible, really. So I wanted to say that. Yes, what did Byron Katie call it? The infinite continuum of joyous creation. Yes. Yes. That is our birthright. That is the glory of the heart of original humanity. Yes. And the teachers who say, be vigilant, keep questioning, I would agree. I'm not trying to stamp down the joy or say the joy isn't the compass. The joy is the compass. When we're having the stressful sense of imbalance and disharmony, we're further away from our true nature. There's no doubt. And when the uncaused, this is the key, the uncaused joy. It's uncaused, it's not dependent. Arises, well, yes, that's a celebration beyond any kind of, that's the hallelujah. And we don't immediately have to say, oh, I'm not worthy, or she said to be real cautious. Enjoyment is as truth. But it's empty of the agenda of self-preservation, self-centeredness. That's how you recognize it. It's spontaneous, effortless, and beginning and endless. We all seem to be resonating with this, so I'm going to keep going. Love is usually thought of as an emotion, but it's vast. Egos cannot love because an ego isn't real and it can't create something that is. The Buddha is beyond any identity, and that's what I see as pure love. When I refer to love, I'm merely pointing to the unidentified, awakened mind. When you're identified as a this or a that, a him or a her, any kind of physical self, body, or personality, you remain in the limited realm of the ego. And if your thoughts are opposed to love, you'll feel stress, and that stress will let you know that you've drifted away from what you fundamentally are. And if you feel balance and joy, that tells you that your thinking is more in keeping with your true identity, which is beyond identity, and that is love. And she goes on to say, and I think this is very important, it's a little wordy, but in the early days, I was in love with it all, and I still am. I loved everything I laid eyes on. It was all beautiful to me. All of it was ultimate reality. I was in passionate love with everyone and everything. And every time I saw people, I fell in love. And I would walk up to someone and look into their eyes, and with all the love, I would say, "You are God. You are my dearest, most intimate self." But I soon learned not to do that. I deeply relate. And I learned that if I stayed quiet and still as that love, what came through was what I called the cleanse, the cleansing of itself. It purified itself from anything. The cleansing looked like tears and humility and death of the personality and death of the self that might remain. And I could see that any time I spoke when someone hadn't asked, I was met with confusion. People would look at me and their eyes would reflect back a crazy woman, but I had such a hunger to burn up whatever thoughts arose in my mind and whatever physical reaction came through in relation to the thought. I let it come, and I would shake or burst into tears or laughter or express whatever needed to be expressed wherever I was. When I was in public, I experienced the whole of it, the unraveling of it, the knots being untied, the death. One morning, on the streets of Barstow, a Latino man walked up to me and said, I watch you walking every day in pain and agony, and so often I see you crying and keening. Why do you do that to yourself? This was the first time I realized that I was crying. I remember being shocked that he didn't know I was undoing everything in the universe. For everyone, for all time. I was amazed that he would have to ask about something so obvious. I'm undoing all of creation, I said, and this is what it looks like. He just shook his head and walked away. And that is love. I'm undoing all of creation. It's no joke when they say the end of the world. The end of the suffering self. The end of the separate self. Not the end of love, which has no beginning or end, and is original, causeless heart of all that is the ground. It's the heart of the ground. It's the heart of matter. It's the reality of the world that we are not able to see through the eyes of a separate self. And for some reason, my friends, we have signed up for the undoing of all of creation. To sit as infinite potential, undivided, unborn, undefined, uncategorized, unreferenced, unhistorical, in this potency of now, absolutely intimately, without agenda, and absolutely impersonally, without history. And in that, what is true and original and glorious and beautiful and divine is tasted, touched, felt, seen, unobscured. But do you hear what she's saying? The guy comes up to her and says, you're gnashing your teeth, you're keening, you're crying. What the hell is going on? I'm undoing all of creation. In the name of love, as love. Think of the, maybe think is the right, isn't the word. Harbor this. Contemplate it, bring it home. All of it. The earth has finite supply and we are subject to supply and demand. We get our source of life from this, that, or the other thing. We die, we get sick, the world is shadow and light. The world, all of it. Of course it is, because we're conceiving of that. This is tremendous. It's beyond what our minds could ever comprehend, the depth of the false self. Everything we've taken for granted is unreal. As Rumi said, only a sleeper believes the dream to be true. The door between the worlds is open. Don't go to sleep. Don't go to sleep, as he says. Don't go anywhere. Stand still. That's the birth of reality in a physical form. It is, rather than the mind being a former through belief, this form, that form, all in opposition, always in opposition, always with the agenda of self-preservation. I mean, under the influence of the false self, we are willing, out of self-preservation, to send children to go murder other children across the planet so we can be safe and warm. This is the depth of it. Self-preservation, just to keep the self alive. Because of something that isn't ever real, as she said, to begin with. It can never love because it can't do anything that's real. This is the depth of it. And yes, absolutely, it involves embracing the joy of the infinite continuum of creation. But it is beyond the mind forming belief filters, belief shapes, belief forms. It is only ever an avenue of awareness, causeless love. And that's the thunder of silence. As we watch the actuality come into form before our very eyes. We call it a miracle. We call reality a miracle. And we call all the other stuff well, this is our lot in life. Here we are. Struggle for everything until we die and everyone around us dies. Oh. But how will we ever meet or inhabit the moment as it is when we think it should be something different than it actually is? We can't meet it. We can't inhabit it. There will always be a gap. The gap of should. The gap of my agenda. The gap of self-preservation. So she doesn't say, I recognized causeless love and joy, and then all of a sudden, I had nothing to deal with. I mean, maybe if you're, I don't know, maybe, I just don't know. All of she's calling it cleansing. Buddhists call it purifying. Returning is what it feels like here. Everything returning to love, everything returning to originality, which I didn't know, but I found out that redemption means return to originality. That's what it means. That's its definition. And we can't get there through rebelliousness. And maybe you don't have a rebellious mind, but mine certainly was very cynical and rebellious back in the day when it belonged to somebody. And it can't be in a against something. Well, I'm just not going to believe anything anyone says or what the famous they word. If we start using they a lot, it's really a signal. It's truly a signal. You know, I mean, when we're using it in that way of like them, the ones who have somehow imposed something. I used to hear this when I worked at the hospital all the time. You'd come into work in the break room or whatever, and it was all about the they. I was like, what are they talking? You know, I didn't know. But I'd be like, who? And they'd be like, them. You know, it's just, I'm like, okay, you know, they're doing it. So, you know. You see the natural, it's beyond willingness, right? It's just a natural responsiveness in her account of living as love, which she describes as unidentified awakened mind. That's what you find at the heart of matter, at the heart of the mind, at the heart of all that is. Love all ways. When there's no claiming, having, objectifying, keeping, storing, referencing, that it just comes into view. And how do you say it? The emptiness engenders, you might say, provides for compassionate understanding. Compassionate understanding because we can't walk that walk down the street in Barstow, undoing creation as something other than love. No way. No way. We've tried for years to come up with rules, regulations, schools of morality, all of it, in response to the false self's behavior, in response to its violence, its bigotry, its war. They're limited, and it's just something that isn't actually real trying to meet something that isn't actually real and make something real. You know? So when we say to ourselves in the kind of throes of this dissolution, is this really okay? Can I just really actually fully let go and trust this and just, be present and listen in the moment as the moment itself informs? Yes, yeah, it's just not habitual or comfortable at the moment because we're not used to the truth. We don't even have the perceptual capacity to see it. We see the appearance and we believe it to be real. What did it say? How will we ever directly encounter or meet the moment as it is if we are thinking it should be other than it is? The gap between what actually is and what we want it to be begins to close when we give the attention to effortless presence and trust. As that gap between thinking about experience and directly inhabiting the current moment as it is closes, then we stand naturally, naked, as the moment, and we have the opportunity to remember, directly encounter the emptiness of appearance, the heart of matter, and the reality of causeless love. I've found that to be the case. And I recognize this way that we have behaved. It comes almost unwittingly. I mean, Dr. Hawkins used to say 1/10,000th of a second. We're talking, I think it was in small group, I don't remember where it was or whatever, but the relationship piece that somebody was bringing forward in satsang last night, well, then how do you relate? And that is a journey. That is a transition and a transformation. I was telling somebody in, I think it was small group, that back in my younger decades, prior to this world that is now, there was always the walk and talk and bitch with your girlfriends. It was a major pastime. And when it started sounding like noise that I couldn't relate to anymore, that was a big transition. That's a small example, but I mean, we all have those kind of things in our lives to contend with. There's shifts where what was really, really relevant, it isn't resisted, pushed away, or fought against, or rebelled against. It simply becomes irrelevant and goes, not to be found anymore. Just not to be found anymore. This is the thing about love, is it all reharmonizes. It's not a program or an agenda that the ego sets out, and reharmonization sometimes looks 100% frightening or ridiculous or crazy to the dying false idea. But then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wow, how did life turn into this? You have no idea. I found it interesting that she called it cleansing. You know, she didn't come from any kind of tradition with purification or anything like that. We've been working with Ho'oponopono somewhat. It came spontaneously here, and then I sort of found out it was a thing, of the indigenous people of Hawaii. And I'm so grateful that it somehow or another found root here. But, and I've told this story many times, but it's so inspirational. Dr. Hugh Len, who kind of popularized it, I guess you might say, and then he got kind of bummed that he did, because people took it up and ego-fied it. He studied with an enlightened indigenous woman in Hawaii, totally awake. And she had moved the reconciliation tool of their tribal knowledge, which is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Rather than putting people in prison, they just worked that out. She had kind of reinvented it in a way that was she called it self-identity through Ho'oponopono. And this Dr. Hugh Len worked at the prison for the criminally insane. So people who had murdered other people, tortured other people, done this, done the other, done all the criminally insane things that we think of as the worst of the worst. And they hired him to be, I think he was a psychotherapist. And he came in and he said, well, bring me the files of the clients that you want me to see. And so they did. And they start telling him where the clients are. And he's like, no, just bring me the files. I don't need to see the clients. And he sits in an office with the files and he reads the reports of horror, and he takes responsibility for seeing the world that way. And starts cleansing, like the Byron Katie story. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you. And he, quote unquote, what he said is, I worked on myself and the way I was seeing the world. And they all returned to sanity. They all woke up. They weren't bad people. They were under the influence of the false self. one a piece of awakened fabric of the universe. That's the effect. Who knows how many lives Byron Katie has transformed? Who knows? I'm not saying we all need to get on some kind of platform. I'm not. What I'm saying is that unidentified awakened mind, which is love, left to its natural unfolding without the obscuration of a false self, moves as love, like water moves as wetness. It doesn't need a program. It needs an avenue of radiant transparency that it may be perceived like electricity. Always has been there. We didn't know. Like every drop, every proton of empty space can light an entire universe with its power. The quantum physicists have measured it. Every proton of empty space that hasn't yet been decided, that still exists in that infinite potential nakedness, rawness, originalness. What does it take? An unidentified, awakened mind. And a willingness not to go them, they, this, that, good, bad. And that's really tricky too, because we think it's going to be super great to give up the bad, but we have to give up the good that's in relationship to that as well, to actually come into the direct experience of goodness uncaused, prior and original to division and opposition. And yes, how delightful that it engenders in the body of existence, the body of Christ, the one thing happening here. It engenders joy, beauty, presence, heart, soul. All the gorgeousness. Here we are, naturally, which word do we want to use? Instruments of expressions of this. We don't have to, it can feel that way. I understand, like when Ani says, well, none of us are walking on water. Well, yes. But for some reason, and I don't know what it is, and I don't really care, I've always felt it to be very close and not far, even though it wasn't always being demonstrated because the appearance is too dense, like with familial stuff or the world of war. And I've always had teachers that have talked about the direct experience of it, not the let's sign up for, and I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not against it. I'm not against anything. I'm not judging. Not at all. I've just hear that there's never been the, oh, what's a strong word? There's never been the addiction to the seeker. It's more of a like, okay, yes. I heard Dr. Hawkins say, yes, that's my direct experience. I'm not always paying attention, giving attention, resting attention as the true nature. But absolutely, that's the truth. I could hear it. Haja, I could hear it. That's my experience. And it's your experience too. In times when the false self has been absolutely quiet. And everyone here has had that experience. But we're more or less giving way to it, paying attention to it. Going home. So it can sound kind of lofty and what does she really want from us? Are we supposed to be miracle workers? You know what? That's why I loved the excerpt from Byron Katie, because she's just walking the streets of Barstow, man. Like she is just walking the streets of Barstow, looking like a crazy mofo. Like, you know, people are thinking, what is going on? And undoing creation, that's all. It's a matter of attention. It's a matter of identification, sincerity, availability, and compassionate understanding for whatever the particular flavor of your particular mind is going to throw back at you. Cynicism, that's a big one for Western minds. The intellectual, educated Western mind thinks this is a pile of crap. Cynicism, rebelliousness, victimhood, unworthiness, I don't know. We've all got our flavor. Compassionate understanding. I see you and I understand. I understand what that is. That's the false self and its agenda of self-preservation and its fear of death. There it is. It's the monster under the bed when you're trying to put the toddler down. They're very convinced there's a monster under the bed. Can't just, look them in the eye and cynically deny it. I mean, there's the compassionate understanding is greases the wheels. It's the balm. I understand. Like when you're with a friend, you don't need them to fix it, you need them to understand it. I understand. Don't you? I understand. This upheaval, this freak out, this chaos. Everyone's running for their life, supposedly. You don't know till you know. You don't know till you know. Okay, let's take a break. Thank you.